In early 2023, a series of rapid and strange events unfolded, starting off with the shooting down of a Chinese spy balloon off the South Carolina coastline. A lot of media attention was brought to this. However, as more anomalous things occurred, such as shooting down of multiple objects, after a while we were left in the dark, and we still don't know exactly what occurred. However, recently, photos of the third object were released. As time progressed, only breadcrumbs of information came out, so it's important to look back at that to provide more context when creating a 3D recreation to analyze the image that we provided. Since as of currently, it's really the only visual evidence we have based on this case. It's important to note that Pentagon officials were calling them objects and not balloons for a reason. The second object to be shot down was done so in North Alaska, which is currently still unknown what exactly it was.
Those pilots, we have learned, have given very conflicting accounts of what they actually experienced, with some pilots saying that the object interfered with the plane's sensors, other pilots saying that they didn't really experience that, other pilots saying that when they looked at the object, they could identify no identifiable propulsion system, and they did not know how it was actually staying in the air.
Going back to the third object we'll be focusing on, it was shot down in Yukon.
The object was about the size of a small car, so not similar in size or shape to the high-altitude surveillance balloon that was taken down.
Eventually, a document of this object came out, where it was visually described as a cylindrical object where the top quarter was metallic and the remainder is white, as well as a 20-foot wire hanging below it with a package of some sort suspended below it. This is the object that we now see, and one of the main visual evidence that we have. Shortly after this event, another object was shot down.
This right now, but, quote, U.S. military has decommissioned another object over Lake Huron. This is according to one congressional source and one Department of Defense source as well. Now, look, this would make it the fourth object that the U.S. has shot down.
Well, Kate, President Biden authorized an F-16 fighter jet to take it out this afternoon, and a U.S. official tells me it appeared to be octagon-shaped with strings hanging off of it.
Not much is known about this fourth object, but it's important to note that other reports of octagonal objects have come out in relation to UAP, such as Jake Barber's and Herrera's UAP. It's also worth noting the one shot down in Yukon had wires hanging off it, was cylindrical in shape, and also had some sort of package below it. However, the one shot above the lake didn't seem to have any discernible package below it, but did still have wires and was also octagonal in shape.
There is no indication that they are state affiliated.
We don't yet know exactly what these three objects were, but nothing right now suggests they were related to China's spy balloon program or that they were surveillance vehicles from any other country. At their recommendation, I gave the order to take down these three objects due to hazards to civilian commercial air traffic and because we could not rule out the surveillance risk of sensitive facilities.
So now what we're left with is just sparse information and just these photos. So if you're new here, here's the goal. To investigate anomalous phenomena, accurately reconstruct the otherworldly like a cargo cult, bring clarity to the unclear and narrow down angles of hoaxery, while entertaining open-minded exploration of hypothetical connections to other studies, similar sightings in the occult, all in pursuit of cataloging and capturing possible features and secrets within the seemingly unknowable. In admiration to the phenomenon itself, this channel's design respects and reflects the anomaly, making it difficult to find and relocate, unless you stumble across it or you seek it. Subscribing secures this bond, while interactions through liking, commenting, and sharing changes the probability greatly for others to find out more about the unknown. So let's get into this now. Alright, let's look at the 3D recreations I made of this. There's a whole graveyard here of attempts, but I got pretty close to it. Now let's go into top-down view of this thing first. Get these things out of the way actually, so we can just see what we're looking at first. So the one on the left is something that was released a couple months ago, and then this one was a bit more recent. The one on the left is better quality, and the one on the right, they're kind of just pretty screwed up. Also, goddamn pixelation on this thing, and you can't even make out what the hell's going on really. But it shows the object at a slightly different angle. That doesn't really help much when you kind of just have absolute pixel bleed into complete obscurity. So I based the whole entire recreation on the original image that was released based on the Yukon 2023 UAP. Okay, now with that in mind, I want to pick this apart a bit more. So the understanding that we have of these objects, this object specifically, the Yukon case, is that it was cylindrical. And I guess when you report an object like this, it's like, well, what do we call it? A circle? no, that's going to confuse people. Do you mean like a sphere? And then people are going to say that. Do you mean a sphere? It's like, no, it's a circle. Okay, what's a three-dimensional circle? Well, a three-dimensional circle is a cylinder when you kind of just flatten it down, right? So I guess they called it a cylinder. And that's basically my understanding of why they're calling it a cylinder. And I don't see that there's any sort of foreshortening that could occur that really indicates that it can be some sort of cylinder and some sort of angle. So as I understand it, they're trying to label it as a cylinder, and that's a bit confusing. There are reports of circle UAP in general, and that's a bit confusing in terms of like misidentification with that in terms of disks and other stuff. As you know, disks are more like flattened flattened spheres, I guess, where you still have sort of a bowing on each of the side. Um, yeah, a bit more like this. Yep. Um, and sometimes you got the little compartment on top, I guess. Anyway, getting a little sidetracked here. Fuck it, why not? Anyway, looks more like a dumpling or something. I don't know. Anyway, so um, if we talk about this specifically first, I want to pick this apart in just certain aspects I noticed when looking into this. So first up, one thing I noticed is that it seems to fit pretty well with 12 part um, piecing or cutting of the object. So if I hide this section here, and you can see that it actually lines up pretty well with this sort of segmenting cut of 12, um, a sort of circle divided by 12. And I can just sort of zero out the rotations here, so you can see that like this is just a 12-piece circle. Now, if we go and smooth that out, this is the object sort of shape that you get. And the other report of the other object was that it was octagonal in shape. Now, if you aren't keeping up with the sort of octagonal nature of things, there's actually another Jake Barber, another whistleblower that came out recently, who has like um, over a decade of military experience. He reported a octagonal shaped UAP, and no one's actually really connect these dots yet. But the octagonal UAP reported, back in 2023, it kind of just got swept under the radar, and that's another octagonal shape again. So that's pretty interesting. But I wanted to see if it had any merit to this one in terms of cutting, and it's misaligned with this one. So this is the Yukon 2023 UAP. This is not the Lake Huron. I think I'm getting that correctly. If not, I'll put a sort of correction on screen right now. But so it actually doesn't line up as well compared to how it does with the 12-piece sectional cutting of this object. So, let's move that over. It's a bit confusing here, so let's get that out. So you'll see here, lines up pretty well. Now if I move over to this one, it's a bit wonky. And no amount of foreshortening or whatever is really going to line it up, because you're going to get like just sectional weirdness going on that doesn't properly align. But anyway, it's more likely that this is a, as reported, cylindrical object, but it does seem to have a cut within this section. So now let's just zoom on back here, and I want to take this object now and look into potentially interesting parts of this thing. And just before I jump on forward, as I previously mentioned, this section and these sections here are pretty similar in sky values. So I do think this is just continued sky. Now, if we keep this in mind with this object here, and I'm just going to zero out this again. Let's look at the other cool stuff. Maybe it aligns with math, and let's do it. So this is the golden ratio, and circles in relation to it. So get it close. Yeah, this is good. So if we sort of take the object that I've recreated here, move it to the golden ratio, and then hover this interior circle. Hey, look at that. Seemingly, it aligns. And I don't know what to make of that, but that's kind of cool. That seems intentionally designed to be the case. Um, golden ratio is it's found in nature, so it's either this is a human-made thing, or it is inspired by nature, or something had the conscious knowledge about this stuff to replicate it in the way that it does, or whatever, really. But yeah, I don't know really what to make of it, but I thought I'd share anyway. Um, and I was kind of also wondering, it's like, okay, this is cut up into 12 pieces. Does anything else do that? It's like, okay, something comes to mind, and I've got to test it out. Basically, just curious enough to see if it actually had a chance to align with anything. Heyo, we're at the Zodiac and also the Mazzaroth, which is just the biblical sort of version of the Zodiac as well. But they actually kind of line up as well, which is kind of weird because I just grabbed some random image offline, and turns out well, it aligns pretty well with sections of this thing as you sort of scale it down or whatever as well. But okay, whatever. And then this is sort of an older depiction of the zodiac, and I don't think they use like a compass or anything like that. This is kind of hand drawn, and I'll show the date of when this sort of image came on, was around, in the background here. So, but it's weird that it aligns up as well. So, this is all just speculative, of course, but I just wanted to show it anyway on the off chance that it did have any relation to occult shit. I mean, it's possible, but I think I'll just leave it at that since I'm just speculating here. Okay, now this next part here is a bit more. I got to be a bit more careful about it because, um, basically, when this stuff came out, um, it was pressed to get this information out through the Department of National Defense. And as they were pressed, they released this information. So, and so these two photos came out, and then people were making links to another video which came out from Asia, uh, 10 plus years ago. And I'm being a bit vague in terms of what I'm referencing here, is because if you actually look into the video's apparent origin, and as the origin we understand is from this channel, if you look into that channel's sort of reputation, especially if you search up it on Metabunk, it's not hard to find out who I'm talking about, by the way. They're suspicious. They're very suspicious. So there's already some red flags that I feel uncomfortable with. I realize some of you might click off and have a look at who the hell I'm talking about right now and then jump back into this later, but do as you will, I guess. That's probably the stupidest thing to say in terms of YouTube and how you're meant to approach it, but fuck it, whatever. Do what you want. I'm going to start tearing through these guys now anyway. But if you also look at the descriptions of the videos and the channel itself, they claim that they own distribution rights. And a lot of channels are kind of using it right now still because they believe it's potential evidence. And I want to highlight some suspicious natures within this thing. So before we do that, let's talk about this UAP itself, because people kind of just saying like, as this video that I'm referencing here, and I've recreated this thing in 3D. So this is a recreation of the thing depicted within uh, the video, but it's not the actual image. So as I recreated this thing, I noticed some differences pretty much. And so first up, I'm just going to talk about the differences between them, because people are saying that they're the same object and stuff like that. And I think that's actually distracting and distracting from the fact that we got these images first. So let's focus on this one afterwards. So difference between the shapes. So Yukon is on the left. These are all Yukon, and the thing that I'm talking about, which if you know what I'm talking about, is on the right. And the differences between them is that this is a 12 part circle that is being cut. And the thing on the right here is a 16, the closest I could get fractionally was a 16 sort of sectional circle that is 5 pieces are missing essentially. And then also, if you look at the sort of central point between these two shapes here, um, so this thing is not a central sort of circle. Um, and if I go to top down here, you'll see that the Yukon one is, but this one isn't. And it's a bit more lopsided to the left. And people who want to look into this further, I'm going to throw this model up online so you can compare what I'm talking about. Basically, these angles that I've taken from this thing as well are sort of from the peakest value of how exposed it becomes to the camera. So it's basically like the peak tilt on each side. And also something to notice is that something to note is that I've done it so that like both sides of the tilt actually stay on this same value of so this is if this tilts at a degree on the x value of 61.4, and this goes negative 61.4 as well on the other tilt to the other axis. So that already feels like animation values, but I thought I'd highlight that as well. But anyway, the differences between these two forms is that you can already see that this is like overlapping to the middle section of it, and this one juts out a bit more. So they're difference in shapes already. Just to isolate them and paying attention to all these sort of differences in detail, they're different shapes. Now, I don't know about the full legitimacy of this thing, but because of the origin point, I'm just going to put it away before I know more information about it. But I want to discuss the channel itself here because I have a bone to pick with them, is because when I look into the other videos that they have on that channel, it seems like it's just a CGI artist that is just repeatedly trying to create hoax content. And I've never seen it in this sort of form. And look at the video count, the amount of videos that they've made. Look at it and look at all the videos they've made and try and spot these issues that I'm going to list out. I don't want to show the content once again because I don't understand fair use, and even though it's this critique and analyzing hoaxery, but the issues that I have with it: lighting, materiality, animation, focus, focusing of the camera. I mean, there's also reuse of assets as well, like specific UAP models are now appearing in like other videos that just look even worse. Like what is going on in this thing, and like these just stupid effects going on as well that just scream CGI from like 10 plus years ago essentially. And it's all very suspicious. There's also other issues that I'm noticing it as well, like trees not even moving. And then like objects moving behind them sometimes as well. And basically why that happens sometimes is because when you sort of marquee or cut out a tree or alpha map the sort of negative space between it, you usually want to have a static image so you can do that. So but finding trees that don't move, it's like, okay, whatever. So basically the source that this is apparently coming from, they're suspicious. And as a result, this is the apparent origin point of it, makes it suspicious. And looking into the people that run this thing, and as well as other things they run, I'm going to leave it until we can find out more information because I don't want to touch it right now. Yeah. So once I find out more, maybe I'll take another attempt if it turns out to be a bit more real than currently we understand. Okay, now on the chance that they are the originators of all of this content and it turns out to be fake, it's worth thinking and reflecting on this. That means that they've spent a stupid amount of time to create a giant library of fake UAP content. And like what I don't even know what to say to that, honestly. Like, what the fuck? Just what the fuck? But that's on the chance that that is the case. So hopefully we can find more information about that because we're in trouble if that's the case. Because this could be a reference point for the potential misinformation that is going on that this could be entirely individually orchestrated, which very much could be the case. But I don't even know what to say to this, honestly, until I know more. I'm just kind of getting grossed out by the hypotheticals and want to move on. Okay, so if I take this thing now, and I want to actually compare it to some other research some people have been doing on the Yukon UAP, and some people online have been looking into some 1960 satellite photos that apparently came out during that time. And I haven't looked too deep into it, but they're basically saying that there's a sort of a similarities between the shape. And taking the 3D recreation that I made, and you have to remember that this thing is pretty pretty closely matched up to what is being depicted. And if we go ahead and grab this thing, shimmy it around, okay, that's good. Toggle on, toggle off, toggle on, toggle off. Yeah, that's as kind of good as we can with a quick scaling up. So, with that in mind now, let's talk about what's happening between these two sort of forms. So, first up, there does seem to be, like, if I zoom out, it's a bit more obvious, but if I zoom out, like, you can see sort of like curvature on here, and it kind of does the same thing a little bit here. There's missing segments. Now, I don't think there's really a missing segment in terms of this one. Like, this is the closest thing I can really see, but I think that's still just sort of like pixel bleed or something like that. So you can see that the form in this thing's not that big of an indent really, or if it even is an indent. Like, you can kind of say that in other sections, but once again, I think it's just more sort of quality of how cameras sort of fuck up shit when it's a circle, I guess, especially when it's just a shit quality image. But and maybe the same could be happening here, just sort of compression or screwery, I guess. But it's a 1960s camera satellite thing, so it might be running on an entirely different thing. So I think I'll leave that in the unknowns for now. But anyway, another detail is that the sort of dark banding here is way bigger in this one. So that's a potential difference as well between these two forms. And there's also a potential indication of like interior form change going on here, where there's like sort of a jutting out structure. And that's interesting that it could sort of align with the other descriptor within the case sort of document that came out talking about like a, a payload or just sort of like um, wires coming out of this thing. And I don't know if that's actually part of the UAP itself or something, or it's a bit confusing. And there are other cases where there have been sort of like a wire or sort of things hanging off of a object. One of the famous ones, I guess, is a jellyfish. Those aren't exactly wires, but they're like they talked about it being sort of like scaled tendrils or something like that. Um, so and mechanical, seemingly. I don't really. I'll have to look into that more when I jump into that, but yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything in this image here. So while the document says that this thing has like a payload, I guess it's a bit of a jump off from topic from here, but like, yeah, what the document says that this thing has a wires and a payload, I don't see that depicted here. So I guess I've only created it this thing purely based on the image. And the document itself, I'm not really sure what to make of. And now there is the possibility that this could also have sort of like a cap on it or whatever. Let's just go into here, like, you know, your generic dish-shaped UAP, but I don't think it's the case once again because of the similarities within sort of surrounding value and like it's not really evident to that being the case, I guess, within this image that there is any change in form because of the similarities and value going on here. Yeah, and then, yep, jumping back into this thing, there within this specific image, it's a bit confusing as well what's happening in these dark spots. And I think that could either be sort of just happening, this happens to like um be right above either like trees or some other dark sort of structure, and then it sort of looks like it's segmenting, but it's very specific if that's the case. So I don't really know. So while this is an entirely different case that we don't know about right now, I think I'm just also going to be moving it to the side until more information potentially comes out of that. So based on the information that I have, I've still tried to recreate this thing to the best of my ability, and I have based the structure on what is being depicted in this image exclusively, really. Um, Now, I also want to talk about materiality and stuff like that because that is actually discussed within the document. And let's go jump into that now as well. So this is a material recreation of the information that was provided about the materialistic properties within the UAP itself. And they described the uh, sections of it to be metallic on one side and then white on the other. So I've tried to do that. And this is actually the second time now where we've sort of seen differences in properties based on uh, angle of viewing. So if I actually jump into the most recent case that I covered, which is the Vietnam Black Triangle UAP. And they within the image, which I'll put on screen now, you'll see that the reflective values on of it are extremely brightened, but the shadow values of it are very dark. And so I'll show that in here, and it's sort of like impossibly black in terms of the description that they kind of give about it. And once again, that's sort of like skywards facing um, things are highly reflective and shadow values change in response. So once again, the sort of skywards facing section of the craft might be reflective, whereas the underside might be sort of muted or white in terms of value specifically for this one. So yeah, that's quite interesting. As with all these cases that I cover, a ton of additional work has actually been done on the Vietnam Black Triangle UAP, and you'll find all of the relevant sort of links within the description to all of the videos that I cover. Since I released these videos, they are sort of the jump off point for additional discussions and development to happen. But since I can't actually update the videos themselves, they are going to go sort of the additional efforts and work that I put into it are usually found within threads and whatever on Reddit. So feel free to check those out. And I'll put the most recent up-to-date links so you can keep up to date. But further down, I will also make additional videos that will cover all the efforts that I did within those posts as well, just so I can update all the information specifically just on this channel. I'd also just like to take a moment to say thank you for all the recent subscribers. I don't even really know how to react to it other than just being like, okay, well, yeah, it's so cool. It's very nice to see the kind comments and people contributing and people being interested within these 3D recreations and research that I do on specific UAP topics. And yeah, it's so awesome. So if you haven't yet, feel free to subscribe and follow. I'll be making more of these things. And if you're interested in me to cover some specific cases down the line, feel free to comment them. Or if you notice things within this thing as well, let me know as well. I'd also just like to ask around if there's any interest in people owning sort of tangible models of these UAP that I cover as I sort of explore different cases or whatever. And I'm just trying to like sort of accurately recreate these forms as closely as I can. And it's mostly just used for like research purposes, really, where I can hand it over to other people where they can look into it further. But I guess I can understand that there potentially could be an interest in sort of owning these tangible models that you can put wherever. But yeah, if there's interest in that as well as specific cases to do this for, then let me know. Also, if you haven't yet, feel free to check out the other cases. There's a lot of work behind them as well. But yeah, other than that, see you guys next time.